So mine is a much more informal talk. I'm going to start with the erasure because I really haven't written anything. But I did want to point out, I did want to just sort of say, to jump in with Mary, this is my last book of poems. It's very influenced by her work, so I don't know if you've seen this, but this is my version of an erasure that was inspired by Mary's work. So we've never met before, so I never got to thank you for it. So I figured I'd do it publicly from the podium. So basically what I want to talk about today is my relationship to collaboration. And as a writer, and it's really like the ways it's come into my life and how I use it. So I thought I'd just sort of start at the beginning. The beginning isn't this, but when I was a kid, I would do these sort of strange things, which is I think why I became a poet. I always had a friend, a young friend, and whatever I was reading at the time, I would get it in my head that we should imitate it. And so when I was 10, I had a friend named Arthur Joseph, and I convinced him that the best way to spend our summer vacation was to write a version of Sherlock Holmes. And so we spent every day, we got together, and we wrote 50 pages of Sherlock Holmes together. And it's lost, unfortunately, that work. But then a few years later, I was reading science fiction, and I convinced another friend that we should spend the summer writing science fiction together. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea to write collaboratively. It just really was fun, and I did it. And then someone reminded me that when I was in college, I always had a typewriter set up in my room, and anyone who came into my room had to type on it and had to sort of add to this sort of continuing text that kept going. There's always been this level of collaboration in my work, and I think it is, maybe because writing is a lonely occupation, and I also just like. I like getting inside other people's heads. I like sort of other people's input and just seeing how other people think. In the mid-90s or so, a dear friend of mine, Michael Landis, and I began a collaboration that went on for many years where we set these rules for ourselves where we would mail a piece of wood. This is an example of the piece of wood. And we'd mail this piece of wood. It was about 10 inches by 10 inches. It was very thin Luan plywood, which is a 1/4 inch thick. Not very heavy, and we would just mail it to each other. We'd cut it up, we'd each take a piece, and then we'd just sort of mail these 2 pieces back and forth for 1 year. And the rule was that you had to hold on to it for only like 3 days or something, and then mail it back. That didn't always work. And sometimes the post offices wouldn't mail it either. Sometimes they just refused to mail it. So it became a collaboration with the post office and with Michael Landis and myself. Sometimes the wood would be broken, just like snapped in half, maybe by a disgruntled postman. But you could do anything. When you got the piece of wood, you could do anything to it. You could, and he was an artist, and so he had a whole studio set up with paint and things. I was a poet, so I didn't really have that much. I didn't travel with paint and know how to do things. So I would sort of elaborately maybe put glue some image onto it or write something onto it. And then when he would get it, he would often just sort of erase the whole thing. He would just white it out and send it back to me, and I'd have to start again. And it really was a practice of letting go and not holding on to things, although I would document most of them. I don't have all the images here, but this is just sort of one of them. But I would document them photographically, and I have some plans to make a whole series of each year, just sort of how they changed, how each piece changed. So that was this is before I had any workout. And then I also did a dance collaboration. I was sort of peripherally associated with the dance world in New York, which meant my girlfriend was a dancer. I never really said it that way before. And a couple of her friends just wanted to collaborate with me, and so it seemed like a good opportunity. So I went to the studio with them for a couple months, and we worked on this improvisational piece that we presented at St. Mark's Church, where I imagined I would just read this text I had written, and they would dance, but immediately they just sort of made me part of the dance, and so I ended up dancing with them, which was the one and only time I've danced in public. And then I had a book come out, and then things changed. This is another type of collaboration, which is when it's sort of this, I call it just say yes collaboration, where you've written a book, and then an artist comes up to you, or a musician, or a filmmaker, a playwright, and they just say, I like your poem, can I use it? Can I make something with it? And that type of collaboration is really pretty easy. All you have to do is say yes. And I find it best to say yes. So this is one of them. You can't see the whole thing. This is a poem, Cartoon Physics, from our first book. And this is with the artist Josh Neufeld. He and I ended up doing 3 collaborations. I was hoping he'd do the whole book, but I think he ran out of steam. Or he just ran out of interest and did other things. Oh, look, it just moved to the next one without, okay. That's good. And this is called Father Outside. And this one is a little bit more than just saying yes, these ones, because I actually did, he was a friend of mine and we spoke and I gave him a little bit of input, but they really are his work, and there's certain things, images that are repeated in each of them. You'll see one more will come up in a second. This one is Bag of Mice. And he had done one of this one with this, this image, this figure here, and he actually had drawn a person, and I didn't think the person was really appropriate, and so he ended up doing a revision of it and just having a shadow, which I liked a lot better. But the rest is really his work with my poem, and it just seems to make a different thing. But those are the, those separate collaborations are just sort of say yes. You just sort of say yes and see what happens, and I sort of would learn something from each of these. The poem would sort of be revealed in a new way. It was just really interesting to let it happen and have it out in the world in a different way and have different, these were in galleries or in a gallery or went on some group show. It was just a nice way to have the poems in the world. There were also songs, a few songs were made, and again, I kind of just say yes to them. Some of the songs are very bad, but it doesn't really bother me because maybe somebody likes them. And then there's the next type of is this more engagement with the artist, which I think the reason I'm talking about collaboration, one of them is that I heard that Mary was going to be talking about erasure, and I would say that erasure is another type of it is definitely a type of collaboration. It is a very direct collaboration, and it's more of an engagement with the text. So you're actually, instead of just writing the poem, you're creating something out of something else. And some of these ones, this is a friend of mine in Provincetown named Misha Richter, who's a photographer, and this is a still from a film he made of a friend of ours. And he just asked me, I've done like 3 collaborations with Misha over the years, and and this was the first, maybe the second one we did. And this is based on a still that he did. So we just sort of decide every summer to do a collaboration based on Provincetown, a place we both lived in and loved for a long time. Maybe I'll read this quickly. This is the poem I wrote from it. It's called Harbor, the Conversion. If this bowl is always empty, if it breathes, if it's lung, if a horse can rise from the ashes. Saul was a sailor on the boat to Damascus. He did not know what he was. Paul turned to a voice that rose up from the waves. It chained his boat to the darkness. A man finds ash and he makes it a man. A horse finds ash in a horse. It lifts us, it holds us, it breaks us again. Scatter him into the harbor. So these are the more active examples of. This is one. Another one is, there's an artist, a friend of mine in right, there we go. This is Mel Chin, an example of an artist in Houston, Texas, where I teach half the year. And I went and saw his show about 2 years ago, where he had done a version of what Mary does, where he had re-edited the Encyclopedia Britannica from the year he was born, sometime in the mid-50s. And each volume, he made about 25 images from each volume. So he took and he recontextualized the images and cut them up and made these collages and gave them really beautiful titles. And when I saw the show, I was very impressed and suggested that we collaborate together. That was me actively approaching him and saying, I want to do a collaboration with you. And Mel is much more democratic than I am, and he thought about it for a night and said, well, that's a great idea. Why don't you find 25 poets that'll each write one for each volume? So suddenly he employed me to be his editor for the next year, which I did. So we have a book coming out this year called Funk and Wag, A to Z. And this is one of them. So that was more active. And then the next one is, no, that's not the next one. Where'd you go? Oh, no, it's here. Excuse me. I have to go to, sorry about this. There it is. This is Daniel Heyman. It's going too fast. That might work. This is Daniel Heyman, and he's a visual artist that I met in Provincetown also. And I was working on a book about Abu Ghraib, sort of had something to do with state-sanctioned torture. And then 2 books came out of it. One was called The Captain Asked for a Show of Hands, which is where that redaction was from I showed you. And Daniel and I ended up traveling to Iraq together, or to Turkey together, to interview the ex-detainees from Abu Ghraib. And these are the paintings that Daniel made while we were collecting testimonies with a group of lawyers, human rights lawyers. And the text that he wrote around the edges ended up becoming my poem that I wrote. I took this text this is the text that he sort of wrote in the quiet space during the interviews. And I used that text to create these poems. And then I took the poems and I did an erasure to them and found a poem within them. Maybe I'll read one of them just to sort of give you a sense of it. So these are from the testimonies of the Abu Ghraib detainees. I'll just read the first one. It's a piece called 7 Testimonies Redacted. I woke up, I asked why, my children, my wife, my leg. Outside my head, cold rainy, a tent. There were others I heard. My brother, a pipe, cold water at night. They let me go once, my hands always laughing. The thing about these ones is that I had written a series of poems for this book before I had met these guys, the actual detainees. And they're in the book also, but once I met them, they're sort of very imaginative constructs based on testimonies I read and my own experience, and they're very much a weave of various other voices. And once I met the guys, the actual detainees, I don't think I could have written those poems. I felt this need or this responsibility or some sort of weight or just sort of respect of their language, their actual language. And it seemed like the erasure was the best form for that, to actually honor their words and yet to create something new out of them. So that's how I came up with that type of collaboration. Another one, and I don't know if any of these are more true collaborations than any of the other collaborations. These are just more engaged. Where I do more. Daniel and I worked a long time on this book. A book came out of that, an art book. I ended up, there's a slideshow that goes with this that shows the text, the actual testimonies that then get erased as you're watching it, which I don't think we'll see today. Then I sort of moved into more even active collaborations. There's a young Israeli composer named Guy Barash, who approached me a few years ago to put one of my poems to music and to write a score for it. And I said yes to that. I just said yes to that. But then we ended up doing a much more active collaboration, and now we're doing a full-length opera based on a book that I wrote, which is a whole nother wild level of this. And then the next type, let me see. The next type is I've been doing these lately. It's in this last book that I'm working on now. There's several occasional poems, which is something I could never do before. It wasn't really. I didn't really understand the form. But I've done there's about 4 or 5 in the new book, and that just means something happens, or someone's getting married, or someone dies, or someone is born, or there's an event, and someone asks you to write something for it. And occasionally I've done that, and that seems like another type of collaboration to me. I'm going to read one that I wrote this past spring for the Boston Marathon bombing. I sort of am associated with Boston because I lived there for the first 30 years of my life. And so they asked me to write something for Boston Magazine. It's called Marathon. Pedals on a river, a tree in blossom, one pink bud unopened, falls and is carried downstream and out to sea. From above, the other petals seem to carry it. Closer, this is our map, these are footprints. We grew up drinking this water. Oh my God, I've lost a page of it. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna start again. Did it not print? There it is, sorry. Closer, this is our map, these are footprints. We grew up drinking this water. At the start, there was doubt. We lit a torch. No one believed we would make it. Closer, the legs, the heart, the lungs. It's too soon to say we were lucky. It's too soon to say anything until the cloud is pulled back from the sky, until the ringing is pulled back from the bells. Look, everyone we've ever known runs without thinking, not away, but into the cloud where we are waiting. And I just want to end with just a couple images. I have ongoing collaborations now. I have at least 4 that I can think of in various stages of work. One of them is this artist, Marilyn Minter. I'm going to do a piece with her. This is a series of photographs she took in her 20s of her mother, and which she never showed when they were first taken, and then now she went on and did a very different work, and then which she got attacked for, and then when she showed these pictures, she got recognition, and so I'm going to write a series of or something. I'm going to write something in collaboration with these photographs. The guy Barash, I'm doing still working on this opera with him. There's a band or a woman who does this crazy guitar work called Noveler, and I just think that we should really do a performance together. There's a film that I'm writing a piece for. And the last thing is this friend of mine, Hubert, this film was just at Sundance. And for the last 5 years, I've been working on the text for it, helping him with sort of conceptualizing it. And we're hoping that he does well at Sundance with it. I want to show you, just to end, I want to show you just this website. This is my website, and there's one page of it that has all these collaborations on it. It has a list of collaborations on the sides of various, you click on the links, and there's songs over here that people have made out of them. It's sort of, I like having the archive of it, because a lot of them are very ephemeral. Like, I don't have anything of the dance I did, or I realized of the Michael Landis piece that I don't have any of that on the website. So, they do vanish, which is fine, but it's nice to sort of have some place to think about it, because it is really important to me, this getting out of my own head and having some other input and writing things that aren't ostensibly about my life or my own personal story, but then, bringing myself into it in some way. So, thanks, everybody.